have to begin in Pittsburgh. We have to begin in Pittsburgh, where you were. We talked last week how you were excited to go to this because you had the FOMO of having not been there for Strasburg. I was there for Strasburg, and this was something that you were hoping could be something comparable. Now, of course, those expectations were probably unfair for a lot of reasons, and we can stop doing the Strasburg comparisons now. Like, I understand that's part of the hype train and that's whatever. But let's just focus on this individual day and what it was, what it turned out to be, how it did live up to the hype, regardless of the comparisons. What happened? I mean, you could take us through your day, minute by minute, but I mean, listen, we could go 50 minutes on this. We could go 10 minutes on this. How do you want to start recapping this experience?
I want to start with why I wanted to go. This was my Northern Lights. Okay. This was my Aurora Borealis. I wanted to see the magic, the spark that is Paul Skenes.
Just to be clear, did you see the Northern?
No.
Okay. All right. So this was like
this literally was.
This was your version. Okay. Yeah. I couldn't
actually
see it either. So I'm jealous. But anyway, continue.
I wanted to see like a spark of the magic. I love brief glimpses and buzzes of hope in baseball. And I knew that this would be that.
That is your thing, yeah.
I really love that. And so I wanted to be in person for it. Also, I missed out on the Strasburg debut, blah, blah, blah. And the energy in Pittsburgh for this was different than a normal Pirates game, like undeniably. And the closest it got to the Strasburg debut was in the first inning, where Skenes strikes out Mike Tauchman to start the game. He strikes out Seiya Suzuki, the next batter, and he's up 0-2 on Cody Bellinger. And the crowd feels that and gets to its feet for the 0-2 pitch, and he ends up walking Bellinger. If he had struck out Bellinger, the crowd pop would have been amazing, and it would have been that highlight that everyone wanted. Instead, he walks Bellinger, Morel flies out to the wall, and Skenes kind of settles in to, results-wise, was a relatively mediocre showing. I would say he was better than the final line, and I'll explain why in a second. The fastball command, particularly to the arm side, was a little spotty, and I think that's just because of competitive rust. Remember, he, in the minor leagues, was just trying to check boxes. He said in the postgame that it didn't feel any different than the ones in AAA, and I think that that's kind of impossible. That's not really how this works. But the fastball command was spotty. He got behind in counts, and then he missed a couple spots with the slider. Nico Horner pops the first solo shot, 2 hits in the 5th inning, and then he gets yanked after 84 pitches. But just the energy of seeing something like that was really cool. It was really, really cool. It was pouring all afternoon. It was insane, dude. It's pouring. It stops raining. They take the tarp off the field. It's cloudy. The sun cracks through the sky at 3:21, and then Skenes emerges from the dugout like an angel. It was so freaking funny.
Yes. In that sense, that was, of course, what felt like it was the day you were envisioning, and hopefully, it didn't get delayed. Like, he got to start on time. But I think, and again, I know I said I wasn't going to keep making the Strasburg comparisons, but it is interesting because part of the Skenes story in the early going also, regardless of their comparisons to prospect, but specifically zooming in on this game, is wondering how long he was going to go. Now, part of that was going to be dictated by how he was pitching, but also because the matter of workload and pitch count has been such an issue, there was constantly, once we got past the third, it was like, all right. And, people are upset that that's, where we're at with starting pitching and how we're handling it. And that's fine. I understand that. But that was the thing, too, is you're always kind of wondering when it was going to end. Whereas, again, part of what made the Strasburg debut so amazing is he got better as the game went on, and which culminated in him striking out the side in the 6th and the 7th. And that's when it was just like, oh my God, like what are we watching here? Whereas Skenes, once he gets into the 4th and into the 5th, it's like, all right, it's just a matter of time. But as we see, to your point though, I would say I totally agree, having watching it on TV, like the fastball command was absolutely the most disappointing part of it. It's not, again, this doesn't mean he's not like, he's going to have a good fastball command, but like that was clearly what was missing. And that's what clearly put him into bad counts. But the slider was
the splinker thing is just stupid, dude.
Yeah, I know. That's the thing. And you could see there were some cases where he threw it where he probably shouldn't have, and it probably helped the batter because it was easier to catch up to that than to 100. But yeah, and the slider, except for the one that Horner hit out, was generally really good. So I think the stuff looked great. He was holding the velo. I think you saw how it played. I would say generally I was not disappointed whatsoever. I think the stuff looked like some of the best stuff in the world, as his AAA pitching coach told me a few weeks ago.
I also think it's worth noting Yasmani Grandal, who caught him. This was Grandal's, I believe, second time catching Skenes.
Mm-hmm.
He was hurt for all of spring training and didn't catch him at camp, and caught him for one start in AAA. And so Skenes feels like a particularly unique pitcher to try and sequence and call a game for. And so it's interesting that he, I thought he did fine. And he ends up hitting the big home run in this game, but that's a tough task for Grandal. And I think as the Pirates catchers work more with Skenes, they'll get a better sense for his mix, and that'll help more. I do think that the question of was it worth the hype, is kind of pointless.
Yeah.
Because it could have been worth the hype. It could have been the thing. And very rarely do we have anything that could be it, right? And I don't think that Skenes was good enough to warrant we won't remember his start forever, right? We'll remember this game for a long time, but we won't remember the result of it. I mean, he did strike out 7 guys across 4 innings, which is impressive. There were times where he clearly overpowered the Cubs lineup, made them look silly. And I think he's only 21.
Yes. I would say, and as we transition to part 2 of this ridiculous experience that you had, he struggles when he comes out, gives up a couple hits and gets pulled. If the bullpen comes in and closes it down and they just go on to win a normal, 7-3 game or whatever, and there's no rain and they just win and it's a normal time game and Skenes comes out, it just feels like a normal Pirates win, and the Pirates fans, even for that one night, can all feel like, hey, this is the start of something. I think not that it would make the start elevate to some historic level because the start was what it was. I still think that it would be feeling a little bit different than ultimately they did. I know the Pirates ended up winning this game, but it was quite a journey to get to that W.
Okay, so I'm now going to put you in my head. So here's what happens, right? Skenes gives up hits to start the 5th inning. The Pirates are up 6-1 at this point. 2 hits to start the 5th. At which point, I, Jake Mintz, head down to the tunnel. Here is why. In Pittsburgh, the clubhouses are on the other side of the underground tunnel, away from the field, across the tunnel. Usually they're on the field side. And so what that means is at PNC Park, you can see players, if you're in the tunnel, go back to the clubhouse walking through the tunnel, which is not a public area, but an area where I can be. And so I said to myself, sorry, Kyle Nicholas, I want to go see what Paul Skenes looks like as he walks back to the clubhouse, right? And so I go down and I perch myself there, and Kyle Nicholas comes in, he gets 2 quick strikeouts, and I'm readying myself for Paul Skenes to walk through and get a glimpse of him so I can kind of write it. How does he look? Is he whatever? Okay. And then all hell breaks loose. Nicholas hits Ian Happ, walks Nico Horner, walks Michael Busch, walks Miles Mastrobuoni. And at which point, I am not watching this. I am down in the tunnel, following on my phone to wait for Skenes to come out. And I just hear groans, 34,000 people groaning above me, and security guards watching on TV groaning. One guy throws his hat down at the last walk, okay? Then Josh Fleming comes in, walks Yan Gomes, and allows a little dinky single to Mike Tauchman to tie the game. And it's wow, this is bananas. And then what ends up happening is it starts pouring, torrential. So they bring the tarp on the field and they delay the game. It ends up being delayed for about 2.5 hours, okay? I don't know that. I'm in the tunnel, okay? Still. I don't know that.
You're where's Paul Skenes? What happened?
I'm where is Paul Skenes? What is going on? Here's what I see. I see a little dinky grounder on my phone, like on the game day app. Then I see Andrew McCutchen walking through the tunnel. And then I see O'Neal Cruz and Connor Joe and all of the Pirates walking into the clubhouse, but no Skenes. And I'm like, what's going on?
You're like, did the Pirates quit after Kyle
That's
Nicholas
exactly what I thought.
after Kyle Nicholas walked 3 straight guys without throwing a strike?
I was like, are they just giving up? I would. I mean, that's a tough show. And then I go on Twitter and I see that it is pouring. And eventually Paul Skenes walks through the tunnel into the clubhouse alone. Right. And it was like, oh my God, what a bizarre
because in
thing.
Theory, Paul Skenes was waiting for the inning to end, right? That's pretty standard. Starter comes out of the game, and especially if they are responsible for runners on base, they will wait to see whether their ERA will balloon not to their liking, or now of course Paul Skenes' case, whatever. That's very standard. Then you'll see them go into the clubhouse and they'll
right.
depart.
And especially Skenes is a guy who doesn't even sit in the dugout when he pitches. He sits in the tunnel. Like that's a thing that he does. But if you watch the broadcast back, you see him kind of being happy-go-lucky and smiling and joking with Jared Jones and
after he comes out,
Mitch Keller after he comes out, and then slowly as the inning starts to turn into a disaster, he gets more and more serious, and people start kind of leaving him alone.
So this is the other thing. Again, does not compare. I watched every pitch of Skenes, and as soon as he departed, I left for a social engagement. So I also missed, like, my experience of this was I was just out with my wife and some friends, and I just opened my phone probably at some point during the delay, or maybe you had texted me and I was like, I'm sorry, what happened? Like it's one thing for Skenes' runs to get cashed in. Like, I don't care about that. I was like, oh my God. So I also was very confused when I checked back into this game. Now, fortunately,
there's a 2.5 hour delay. Game is resumed. Colin Holderman comes in for the Pirates and walks the first 2 hitters with the bases still loaded for 2 more runs.
Here go 2 more for y'all.
He got you. Anyway, Paul Skenes started an inning, and then like 2.5 hours later, it was over. It was one of the most bizarre things I've ever been in the building for. And the way that I took it in was particularly weird. Being in the tunnel, waiting for Skenes. There was a sense of it, and this is probably too harsh. It was like, this is not a thing good teams do. Okay? No. It is an unacceptable, embarrassing thing to happen. And the Pirates pitchers know that. I like Josh Fleming. I like Colin Holderman. I think they're pretty solid. This can't happen. And there was an element of it that was percolating around the stadium that was like, Pirates don't deserve Paul Skenes. This organization does not deserve this once in a lifetime thing, you know? So yeah, it was.
Well, they've had a lot of top picks. Some of them have worked out better than others, as we know. And I am hoping the best for the Pirates and Paul Skenes. They have been very disappointing. They lose the series. It takes this miracle, I guess, comeback, with the Grandal and McCutchen homers after the rain delay for them to squeak out this victory. Barely, right? I mean, even in the 9th, we have some trouble with Bednar, and they hang on for dear life there. But they lose on Friday. They lose on Sunday. They are, I believe, 18-23, which is not a very good record. But so that's the thing. As we very clearly stated on Friday, Paul Skenes could not save this franchise, and I think that was made very apparent on Saturday. But I will say this: I'm so excited to watch him pitch again.
That's the thing.
That's the great thing. And by the way, Jared Jones is also awesome. I know they lost on Friday, but the fact that these two are going to be starting, back-to-back starts for the rest of the season is awesome. It might not get the Pirates, into the postseason this year, but there are few teams that have 2 starters that you're going to be that excited to watch on a back-to-back basis. So they can take some comfort in that. But yikes, there's a lot else going very wrong in Pittsburgh right now.
Yeah, let's not harp on that now. In whole, I'm happy I went. It was a unique thing. Yasmani Grandal ends up hitting a clutch 3-run homer to take the lead, and McCutchen hits a solo shot, and the Pirates hang on to win 10-9. Skenes has to wait, obviously, for the whole game because he speaks after. And he's a hilarious character. He's so monotone and very boring. And I would gotta say, I think it's pretty calculated.
It is extremely. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's and that's the thing. I know we sort of talked about like what his personality. Like, yeah, you're not going to get, if you are going to tune into the pressers, you're not going to be like excited to like learn more about his personality. But we will. I think we'll start to get glimpses of it. But it ain't coming out in the press conferences. I promise.
That's for sure.
It is very, very intentionally nothing. Usually a sign of a good ball player. Unfortunately.
All right. So that's what happened in Pittsburgh. The heavens opened. It was bizarre. I will never forget it.
Yes.
But the Cubs end up winning the series in part because the Pirates are a bit of a catastrophe.
Yeah.
Their offense is actually cooking pretty well right now.
Yeah.
Good to have Seiya Suzuki back. Cubs going to Atlanta for a 3-game set this week. So that'll be a fun one.
Oh, yeah. Seiya Suzuki was not having a good time with Paul Skenes.
No, absolutely not.
He was the one.
He had been on the IL. Like, he had been on the IL. He like barely hit it all.
I know.
Right? It was his first game back, and it's like, here's 101.
Yeah,
Get your front foot
sequence,
down.
I think the sequence the second time was, I want to say, slider, splinker, fastball, or whatever. He threw all three in some order. 1, 2, 3. It was ridiculous. So anyway.